So he lived for 8 years, but unfortunately his last 12 years of his life, he was paralyzed, and it was a very sad condition he was in. He continued to work, and I think even to teach. He was living and working in Princeton. So this is a description of him that is appropriate for him, from white to king of postmodernism. As I said, he was part of the group, the New York Five, or called the Whites. That group was known by both names, the Whites or the New York Five. And the other four members were Peter Eisenman, John Haydock, Charles Gwedme, and Richard Meyer. This is the man with idiosyncratic eyeglasses, but this is very common for architects. I think architects do have a problem with choosing their eyeglasses. It's so common, you know, even Stephen Hall has a strange taste in choosing, you know, the frames for his eyeglasses. Then Toyo Ito also has very bizarre whitish eyeglasses. And of course, we know Philip Johnson, and we know Le Corbusier, now we know Michael Grace. This is a possible subject for a PhD paper, the eyeglasses of the architects. There is a problem, I think. I don't know why. Otherwise, you know, he's nothing idiosyncratic, neither about the tie nor the shirt, but the eyeglasses are a little bit, and they all somehow live on the shoulders of Le Corbusier. It is as if they cannot escape, you know, the paradigmatic eyeglasses of Le Corbusier. Strange. Anyway, I see here he had different eyeglasses, so I guess he changed from time to time. And here again, so good. That's good for him. Well, as I said, he was very successful. When he returned from the 2 years spent in Rome, he got a teaching position at Princeton, and he never left Princeton. And it's a beautiful place, Princeton. Maybe it's too beautiful because it is a little bit too bucolic, too pastoral, too quiet, and too harmonious, and too affluent. Well, Einstein also lived in Princeton in a house with a pitched roof, and you wonder how could the scientist of the theory of relativity live in a house which was almost the opposite of the theory of relativity. But then maybe there shouldn't be a relationship between, you know, the quarters of one's life and his theory, or even his creation. I don't know. Anyway, so here we see him, you know, still a little bit youngish. He didn't start building really very young like others. He started to build when he was over 35 or so. He's still young, of course, if you compare him to Louis Kahn, who started, who became known at 55, although he built a little bit before that age, but that's when he became known because of the Richards laboratories and the public bath in Trenton, New Jersey. Anyway, we'll look first at some drawings, and not just drawings, also collages by Michael Graves, who obviously had an interest and a talent for bidimensional art. The resolution is not so good, but we'll see others. You see, he also played with composite methods of representing his preoccupations, both in terms of materials and design and colors. A sketch for a building. Then collage. Pardon? I hear some background noise. If you are so kind to turn off the microphone so we can hear properly. Thank you. This is a building that never came into being, never become a built work, but the drawing was very publicized, you know, some kind of a bridge building. There was also an utopian in him, in the sense that some might see some connections even with the neoclassical idealists, Ledoux and Boulez. You might say that he had a so-called visionary side, but unfortunately that visionary side was challenged detrimentally by a certain populism that I think didn't do him good service. We'll arrive there. So artworks by Graves, who found time who made time to also express himself in this way. Where this is, you know, the perspective of one of his buildings, but in the entourage of some other artistic interventions. He also worked a lot, of course, manually at that time. There was no digital architectonic possibility at that time. So he drew a lot on the famous yellow tracing paper, and not just on the yellow tracing paper. You could say he was a sensualist and a hedonist. He loved the art of drawing, but you can almost feel already a certain leaning towards an aesthetization of architecture that at times was problematic. I think we saw this one, sorry. But this drawing, besides the fact that it has a certain burlesque air, has a vigor that I would have liked to see later on in his built work and also in some of his drawings. And you'll see one or two more drawings like this that he did in Rome while he was in Rome. This one, for example, and I think he could have explored more, from my subjective view, this kind of representation and maybe even this kind of architecture, more instinctual and even a little bit primitive. Okay, now we see a house from 1968, so he was 34 years old, and I think was very good. This house and the following two houses show Michael Graves in his modernistic attire, so to speak, and I think he was convincing. When he was truly a white or one of the New York Five, I think there was a freshness about his architecture which I appreciate even today. So here it was a book published about two houses by him, the Hanselmann house and the Sniedermann house, both excellent. The language is a little bit similar to Richard Meyer, but is different. And while Richard Meyer remained kind of, you know, he didn't change. Both Eisenman and Graves changed. I don't know so well the work of Charles Whitney, but he's also worthy of being talked about in a presentation, and we will when the time will come. But this is not a building to be ignored, and I'm happy Graves built it. I'm only unhappy that he left this kind of architecture, and you will see what I'm referring to later on. At this time, he seemed to able and willing to, if not promote, but accept the challenge of a certain level of vulnerability in architecture. He opened up the box, he opened the cube, and I think this helped him. The building connected with the environment, and it has a certain sociability, if I can say so. It is open, it is adventurous, it is not stuck. Yeah, it is a modernist building, but it has a certain originality. Now, this is a house from 1969, just an addition. And here you will have the chance to see this house near a so-called old-fashioned house or traditional house. And you'll see what you see: the past on the left, the present, or if we are more confident, we'll say the future in the front. But they are actually connected, the two. Now, I don't know, maybe the so-called past or traditional building, maybe it was built after the house by graves. I do not know. On the other hand, you know what a grave is, and graves is the plural of a grave. And I have a tendency, maybe not very profound, but somehow I feel that the name does carry some meaning for someone. The Latins used to say nomen est omen. The name is destiny. What I'm trying to get at is, I think there was a darker side in Michael Graves. Maybe he was aware of it, maybe less aware, I don't know, but somehow the name resonates with certain aspects of his work, and will arrive at those aspects soon. Anyway, so this is the house, another good house, another good modernistic exercise in manipulating volumes, spaces, surfaces, with the exuberance that the modernists had at that time. That's about 50 years ago. And again, I regret that he left this stage of his creativity, and was so influenced by what is called postmodernism. Anyway, another good house by him, the Schneiderman's house from Fort Wayne, Indiana. He was born actually in Indiana from 1972, so he was 38 years old. I think this one was destroyed. What a shame. Again, so many good buildings are destroyed. I don't understand why, actually. You know, if the elements do not destroy them, we destroy them with bulldozers, with bad will, with who knows for what reasons. And it's sad. We lose a lot. The human culture loses. The country, the buildings are built in loses. So why is this happening? I do not know. I talked a few days ago about John Johansson. 10 of his buildings have been demolished, you know, and some very large and important buildings, also some private residences. What a shame. And John Johansson was a member of the Harvard Five. We are talking now about one of the members of the New York Five. There were two distinct groups, and there was another one in Chicago, the Chicago Seven. Of course, Chicago wanted to outdo New York and Harvard, so they associated, I mean, they had 7 members. We'll arrive at some pictures when I talk about Peter Eisenman with a few, well, 2 members of that group. Anyway, and the house from 1974, the Wageman house in Princeton, which I didn't find pictures of. Pardon? I hear. Please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. Now, this is a project, was not built, but is the first work that shows important changes in the way Michael Graves was doing architecture. It was not realized. You already saw some 1 or 2 drawings before with this project, but you can tell that he changed dramatically. This has nothing to do with those houses that we saw built. It is a good drawing. It is a seductive drawing, but it shows, more importantly than the drawing, is the kind of architecture he was interested in at the time when he was doing this. And you will see the change with the first house that he built, which is considered a postmodern house. Is this one, the Plotchek residence in New Jersey from 1977. So he was 39 years old at that time. Can you believe it? Is the same architect who did those that you saw initially. It's a very different architecture, and it's almost as if some kind of a Copernican revolution took place in his mentality, in his mind, in his heart, in the way he drew and in the way he wanted to build, and he built. And I don't know exactly what provoked such a dramatic change, but it is a dramatic change. And from this point on, he will continue on the path of postmodernistic architecture, which I think was a loss. But he was otherwise very, very successful. Of course, there are many books where he's present everywhere. He built a lot, he published a lot, he drew a lot, but he would not look back to his beginnings, and I think that was a loss. Okay. Now, the Portland building, which is a famous building by him in Portland, Oregon from 1982, which I think has problems. And I try to restrain myself not to become too critical or too exuberant in my criticism, if I can say so, because it saddens me, this kind of hedonistic mega approach to buildings that are overscaled. They are, of course, they are public buildings, but there is I think, a mimicked joie de vivre here, because this kind of decorative architecture, because essentially in terms of architecture, look at the windows, you know, they are just, you could say that this is almost a standard box, but he applies this, I would say, rather facile ornaments at a very large scale, and he thinks or thought that he animates the cube. But the cube is very static. The spatial configuration of the building is not dynamic, but he tries to make it interesting. Yes, I understand that there is a scenographic, there is some kind of a stage design here at work, but I personally think that he lost a lot when he abandoned those exercises that he first did. I'm not very impressed by this building. I'm trying to see what are its virtues. What is this building communicating? You know, is it communicating a desire for social engagement? Is it communicating, let's say, ethical values, or is it communicating aesthetical values of a new kind? I don't really see that. You know, I see more like a bidimensional art applied to a cube of very big dimensions, and a monumentality which makes me a little bit worried, because we are supposed to be in a democratic country, no? In the United States, not in Imperial Rome, Mr. Graves. This is not Imperial Rome. This is a democratic country. And I don't think this building is so democratic in its monumentality. But it was appreciated, and he built many like this. Yes, it is in a way unique. Not too many people build like this even then, but I'm not convinced. It is kind of an ornamental monumentality where bidimensionality exceeds spatial concerns and other concerns as well. not talking about context and the vicinity of the trees or the park. No, it's a building that could have been anywhere, and it's kind of indifferent to wherever it is. So if this was the influence of Rome on him, I don't think that influence was truly positive. Because again, we are dealing with a different century and with a different political and social ideology. But I guess the use of the colors and the use of these large-scale, ornaments, because that's what they are, made even these buildings, this kind of buildings, seductive somehow, and people wanted to. Now you look what is on the roof there, on the terrace. Is it a temple for some unknown god? No, it is not a temple. It's probably a technical space. But the way he placed it and the way he designed it makes you think that it's almost like a temple. Well, it's not a temple. We don't believe in the gods any longer, and so we should be rather honest about it. Anyway, drawings. He drew incessantly, and I admire him for drawing incessantly. But the drawings do have something burlesque, and there is something cartoonish about his drawings, and it's kind of a strange meeting between, on one hand, imperial longings almost, and on the other hand, this kind of cartoonish way of expressing himself graphically. Humana building in Louisville, another inhuman building, if you allow me to say so. Funnily, it's for this company Humana, but it should be called, if you allow me to be malicious, Inhumana building. Another monolith of very large dimensions, which crushes you literally. I mean, this is not a building that shakes your hand as a humble friend. No. It is meant to look. It is domineering. It is telling you, you are just a pedestrian, and I am the king. I am the pharaoh, even. And it's not a surprise that he actually built in Egypt quite a lot. Maybe the Egyptians laughed something about this. Unfortunately, the buildings he built in Egypt, I regret he built them. The drawings continue to be skillful in terms of drawings, but in terms of the architecture they show, I don't know. Very rigid and very static and very symmetrical. I'm not against symmetry. I admire great architects who work with symmetry, but they are rigid, very rigid. And what a difference from the man who did those experimental works, if I can call them so, those 3 white houses. The Newark Museum expansion in Newark, New Jersey from 1982. Unfortunately, this one, I couldn't find the picture, and then I forgot to, I apologize. Now, here is a library, also from 1982. He literally built every year at least several buildings, and in some years he built even in 1 year 10, 15 buildings. Incredible. Now this building, because of the scale, is acceptable. Yes, there is historicism. Yes, there is some kind of nostalgia. Yes, there is a little bit of architectonic melodrama, but because of the scale, it is acceptable. Less acceptable, I would say, are those, that canopy and some of the roofing, which is so bucolic and almost placidly so. I know that Leo Krier also built a villa for himself in Florida in the same, using the same vocabulary, and you wonder, I mean, it was Leo Krier a revolutionary or a conformist? But it is known that many times revolutions end up in conformity. Graves was never a revolutionary, really, but the first 3 houses that I showed, had a promise in them towards something, I think, refreshing and new. And again, I personally am sorry he didn't follow that path. Now, the Crown American Building, Johnstown, Pennsylvania, 1986. We are now in the hot years of postmodernism. What a tragic period. And I was there I was then in the United States. I was in New York, and I was almost paralyzed because I didn't believe in postmodernism, and I was surrounded just by postmodernistic attempts, if nothing else. Look at it, I mean, really, do we need this kind of melodrama at the entrance of the building? I hope not, and I think not. And it's not convincing, I am sorry. And when you see what he built at Walt Disney in Florida, is unbelievable. I call it, forgive me for my maliciousness or sarcasm, I call it Mickey Mouse architecture, because that's exactly what it is. And it is so alarming when a professor at Princeton, highly educated, highly traveled, highly cultivated, highly talented, succumbs to the frivolous, offerings of an entertainment industry that is concerned with just that, entertainment. So, and I see something like this even here. What is this thing in the front? Really, I mean, what does it say? What is its function? It's not even primal. If it was, at least, if it had the telluric force of the temple of Hera in Paestum, south of Italy, I would have understood. But it's not. It's in a modern American city, in a democratic country, and I personally doubt. I mean, he's not convincing. So I don't know if this was the influence of Italy on him. Anyway, now the Team Disney headquarters building in California this time. Now we are here in the midst of, to use the linguistic exasperation of Peter Eisenman, grotesque. What we see here is an architectural grotesque. Yes, I understand there are cartoons. It's fine. I like those old cartoons myself. But to amplify some characters from those cartoons at such dimensions and hang them on the facade of a large building, I actually consider it in bad taste. And it is not, I don't think this is innocence. I think this is mimicked innocence. And there is a difference between true innocence and mimicked innocence. I have a feeling this is mimicked innocence, because this is, even the company he serves is not innocent. It's a capitalistic enterprise, extremely interested to make money through entertainment. In other words, through caressing a cat to death. Because what else is entertainment? It is controlling a large population through pleasure. In other words, through caressing a cat to death. Because you keep a large population in some kind of passivity by nourishing it continuously with these caresses, in this case of a visual order. So we look at these so-called sculptures and we say we are in some kind of a paradise. We are children-like, we are enjoying life, everything is fine, the sky is blue, the sculptures are joyous, and we are all children-like. But the truth is not quite like that. And so I lived in the United States for 25 years. I know what the mechanisms are of these, entertainment, and not accidentally, they are called entertainment industries. So they are industries. Even music is an industry. Music, the most ineffable art, became an industry. And this is something worth thinking about. So is film. film, instead of being the seventh art, it became an industry itself. Now, of course, it is done by people who work. I agree. But should we call film an industry? Should we call music an industry? Should we make even cartoons, which are supposed to be innocent and destined mainly to children, to magnify them at this scale? I actually find it grotesque. And maybe it's my own subjectivity, I don't know, but especially also on a building that is perfectly symmetrical and shows some kind of, you know, it's a hierarchical building in a way. It's a monolith that shows power. If this was a palace of justice, maybe I would have understood, of course, excluding the you know, the cartoons, the characters at the top. I actually, believe me, when I started to create this PowerPoint presentation, and I had another one, but I lost it. So in panic, I had to create a new one. I began to feel physically sick. This happened yesterday. While I was working at the PowerPoint presentation, I felt physically sick, because I don't think this is healthy aesthetics. I actually think this is extremely unhealthy, and I could be totally wrong, but he himself got sick at 63, so he was not so old, and he was a man of great success and had you know, success on many levels. Why did he get sick, so seriously sick that he get paralyzed? God forbid, something could happen to me right now. But I don't think deep down he was happy. And how could you be happy doing something like this? Because this only mimics happiness, because it's not innocence. I'm sorry, this is not an innocent building. Now, his own residence is more subdued, is more reticent, and I almost tempted to like it to an extent. It's in Princeton. Now, it depends. This facade, which is only a fragment, is static and is almost a little bit morbid, but especially with that, you know, blocked window in the center, and it is something, I see something a little bit morbid here, but at least it is discreet, kind of discreet, and the whole house is acceptable. Is not so life asserting those three houses that I showed initially, but I could live with this house. Not that it matters if I could live with it or not. I'm just expressing some feelings and some thoughts vis-a-vis his work. Now, plus, when you have so much beautiful greenery, it almost doesn't matter what you do, it's still approximately fine. As opposed, though, to Alt's architects, and this was a virtue he had, he also assumed opacity. In other words, he didn't work with a glass as extensively as some other architects in this period of time did. And in this, maybe there are suggestions for some kind of a return to opacity in architecture and diminish a little bit the obsession with glass and with excessive transparency. Now we are back to another building that I place in the same chapter with Groth texts, very much so. AD classics consider this, you know, a classic. Maybe we should talk about what does classic mean for us today, you know? For me, classics means Villa Rotonda or other building by Palladio or Alberti or Brunelleschi. But when we have this kind of thing called classic, I get sick, I tremble, I am anxious, because I see a world here that I'm not at ease with at all. You know, what is that, you know, melodrama at the top, you know? This is a building that is destined for entertainment, but it shouldn't be kitsch. It shouldn't be, it's something wrong about it. I mean, look what is here. I'm not against decoration at all. I even promote it. I'm not against sculpture. I continuously tell the students, try to bring back sculptures into buildings. But what kind of sculpture? Who are our idols today? What kind of ideology do we serve? The only ideology that animates us is entertainment. That's all we reduce our life to. You know, to me, this is an expression, an architectonic expression of kind of laughing not to cry, or amusing ourselves to death. It's something, personally, I see something morbid here. To me, this is not healthy entertainment. And then use pyramids and this kind of glorification of entertainment at mammoth dimensions, and it's something actually that frightens me. And I have seen, I didn't go to Florida, but I have seen Walt Disney near Paris, and I'm afraid of this kind of understanding what having a good time means. I really am. To me, this is not culture. To me, this is anti-culture, and only mimics joie de vivre, but behind, I think, there is angst, just as I had it when I was preparing this PowerPoint presentation. And this opulence, and this kind of baroque, but it's all mimicry. It's not real. This is not Bernini. This is not Borromini. This is not Pietro da Cortona, because it is not an assimilated history. This is just mimicking the joy of life, and the water falls in abundance, and the sky is blue, and the pyramid is impeccable, and the huge, immense animals or fishes or whatever they are on the top of our pyramids are all celebrating a capitalism that actually is interested in money, and this is the main interest, including Walt Disney. And we must tell the truth, and we must not fool ourselves that it's all about innocence and childhood and being childlike. No, it's not that. It's an industry, and it's very well thought out and very effective. I mean, look here, isn't it strange that we eliminated monarchy, we banished monarchy, but what I see here is another kind of monarchy. We don't have a king, we don't have an emperor, but we have the big, the big conglomerate, the industrial conglomerate, and we are in its shadow, and we are consumed by it. Look at this, look at those grotesque sculptures at the top. It is incredible, actually. I mean, can you compare this with the sculptures that adorn the top buildings, the tops of the buildings by, let's say, Palladio, or even at Chambord, But at Chambord, you had a king. You had Francois Ier. But here, where is the king? There is no king. This is supposed to be a democratic country. So the subject is complex, and maybe sometimes I'm wrong in what I'm saying, but I am telling you what I feel mainly, and then also what I think. That if it is a subjective, and it is, it doesn't mean necessarily that because of its subjectivity, it is, unavoidable wrong. They frighten me, these buildings. Instead of transmitting me an emotion that is sending me back to some kind of childlike past, is not doing that. I mean, look at this interior, for God's sake. I would suffocate in this interior. This is, I feel manipulated again through the mechanism of, of pleasure in a way. You know, everything looks so sumptuous, but what is behind this so-called sumptuous? You know, if we eliminate these curtains, what do we get? We get the inconvenience of a truth we do not like to hear. Now, Disney Hotel in New York, unfortunately for this one, I don't have a picture. No, this was the one in France, but I couldn't find the right pictures. Now you see another building in Atlanta, in Georgia from 1989, 10 Peachtree Palace, which is a fortress, which is, again, this is a building that is telling you the power is not with you, but with us, or with me, whoever manages the building. This is a building that, again, I have some difficulties to see legitimately associable with democracy. Because of the architectural language, you know, I continue to think that the influence of Rome on Graves was perhaps not the best. And it was certainly, there is monumentality in Louis Kahn too, but of a different kind of, at a different, very different altitude. Louis Kahn was serious about history. He was not playing games with history. Louis Kahn would have never used those grotesque so-called sculptures, you know, adorning his buildings. Never. Kahn was an architect, and he found the sublime in manipulating the spaces and placing correctly a brick above another brick. He was a builder. Here we have rather a decorator of talent, but I think he used his talent sometimes, or at least sometimes, wrongly. Now the public library in Denver, Colorado, you know, again, some kind of postmodern bonanza. And look at that central, what a difference between that cylinder and the cylinder of the Temple of Books by Gunnar Asplund in Stockholm, which is indeed a beautiful, beautiful temple dedicated to the books, but without crushing you. What I see here at the top, I mean, it's, you know, 5 floors high, that melodrama at the top, which is probably totally unjustified, and is crushing one, you know. And I don't understand what happened to Graves, because he seemed to be a sensitive man, but I think he got too seduced by Imperial Rome, and he tried to bring it to the States. And, you know, ignoring the century he was in, ignoring the realities of his time and place. It's true, I don't like postmodernism. I don't like it. Very, very few so-called postmodern architectonic gestures are not to be, you know, accused of being inappropriate. Very few. Now here, this was a scheme before he added that melodrama at the top. He probably was a little bit inspired of Gunnar Asplund, but it's a huge difference between Asplund's building in Stockholm and what Graves did. And that thing at the top only amplifies the you know, the questionable decisions he took. The interior is, it doesn't move me in a positive way at all. You know, you almost feel it as if it is some kind of Formica work here. It's not real. The tectonics of the building are not convincing. It's too, I don't know, it seems artificial. Although he used a lot of wood, here there is a little bit of interesting sculptural you know, movement on the left, but otherwise the building is symmetrical and it's rather conventional. And I think this is what bothers me, that at bottom, it is conventional. It is a conformist building. It is not a building born from an artist who wants to honor his time and place with a creativity. that is a little bit adventurous, perhaps, that opens new vistas, new horizons of hope, and so on. I truly think Rome had a bad effect on him. Now, he built in Japan several buildings. I don't know what happened to the Japanese, because the very Japanese that attracted the attention and the admiration of Frank Lloyd Wright, and not just of him, they have a very refined taste, a very refined history, a very refined sense of aesthetics. But sometimes the Japanese also, I hear something, please be kind and turn off the microphone. Thank you. Here again, because yes, when an architect is successful, he receives commissions from the four cardinal points, from Egypt and from South America, from Japan. Now, you see, a building built in the 80s, early 90s maybe, but the building has is a static building, and just a few years later, you had the deconstructivists coming up with something completely different. Isn't it strange? In fact, they were almost simultaneous. You know, in the early 90s, this is how Michael Graves built. In the early 90s, the seven deconstructivists proposed a very different kind of architecture. How do you explain it? The two almost diametrically opposed forms of architecture coexisted. Now, theoretical building Institute for Theoretical Physics, the University of California in Santa Barbara, 1990. I only have this image with this building. It's pastoral. I remember once, and now it took me some time to understand. I wanted once to discuss with Kenneth Frampton about, how is it called? I forgot this word now. Not utopian, but I'm sorry. I forgot the English word. I know it in a different language, but I will maybe I will remember a little bit later what I wanted to say. Somehow this this building made me think of this kind of agrarian utopia, and this one is misleading too when you think about the function of the building. Now it's an institute for theoretical physics, but this building gives you the impression that it's maybe concerned with something else, not with maybe high level physics. So there is, I think, a certain level of lack of sincerity here, but because the bucolic aspect of the building doesn't seem to be connected with the function of the building at all, which probably implied a lot of technology, although it was at a theoretical level. Now, a Malibu house, a private residence, is considered a masterpiece. This is how the real estate offices describe it. You know, because they want to sell it with a bigger the price, the better. And so if it is made by Michael Graves, it has to be a masterpiece. If you are so kind, I hear a noise and it comes from a microphone that is open. Please be kind and close it. There is a background noise coming from somewhere.
Cassie Cruz, can you please turn off your microphone?
Thank you, Florian, because I don't know who had it open. But thank you, Florian. Okay, so here we have, you know, a touch of, you know, even, well, he didn't turn off that microphone. And perhaps I could do it, but I'm a little bit afraid to disturb the, you know, the setting of the Zoom. What should I do, Florian? Please advise me, because it bothers me, that noise.
There or absent, then you can't do anything, or you can kick him. I don't know.
No, I could turn off his.
Then you can turn off the microphone of that person from your end. You will have
Yeah,
that.
I know, but I have to. I know I can do. Okay, I'll try. I'm a little bit afraid because I am not truly very knowledgeable about Zoom yet, and I have to stop the share, I guess. Okay, okay. I will mute him. Okay, okay. Okay, thank you. Now I have to go back to, okay, share screen. Maybe it's not so difficult as I thought. Thank you for encouraging me. Now I have to, okay. All right, so from the current slide. So, I mean, there are some interesting things. He did have talent, but the problem with talent, as you know, is that talent could turn against you when it dominates you, and it depends what you mean by talent. I totally agree with Frank Lloyd Wright when he said talent is good, practice is better, passion is best. When you just let the talent govern you, there is a risk of achieving questionable results. Plus, I think it's important to also have a critical stance, a critical positioning of yourself. If you just enjoy yourself, to draw and to paint and to build kind of in a luxe, calme, volupté state of mind, there is a risk. I think architecture benefits a lot also from some lucidity and some critical distancing even from the the building, the functions of the building, even the client. Some criticism is perhaps, if used properly, is probably good to have in architecture. And I don't see anything critical. He doesn't have, he's not. I don't understand. He's like, I guess he enjoyed life so much that everything was supposed to be paradisiacal, but I suspect that actually deep down there was a certain darkness, so to speak, in Michael Graves. I don't know, because all this beauty almost sickens me, this perfection, and here is the sunset, and here is the armchair, and I just lay there, and everything is wonderful, but I'm very, very skeptical of so much miracle and wonder. And look at this living room. My God, I mean, this living room is for a showroom, it's like, I don't know. I mean, even the books are aligned. It's something, I'm afraid. And look at this room. Look at those openings in the upper part of the walls, which of course you see the influence of his European trip, but I think Alvaro Siza, if he would have seen something like this, he would have been critical, and also Frank Lloyd Wright, because it's so predictable, to place those windows, in such a ceremonial way, and sacrosanct too, and the armchairs, and I don't know. I couldn't live in such a house. I prefer a very modest studio in a block of flats built by the communists. Sorry, maybe I have a disturbed personality. Now, another building in Japan, town hall this time, I couldn't find very acceptable pictures, but you know him already. Here is the cylinder, with columns, equidistant, and symmetry. And then we arrive at an engineering center in Cincinnati. He studied in Cincinnati. He studied architecture in Cincinnati. Funnily, his friend Peter Eisenman built the college, the School of Architecture in Cincinnati, in a very different way, apparently. The colors are kind of the same. I have seen this building. In this campus, they were clever, the people in Cincinnati. They hired Bernard Tschumi Tom Main, Michael Graves, I forgot who others, Peter Eisenman, to build a signature building. This is done by Michael Graves, and it's massive, all right. I mean, you wonder what is here, you know, is it a military school? What is it? I wonder what Pink Floyd would have said about this building. I don't know. I'm not against monumentality. I like monumentality, but I like the monumentality of the past and of the present. I mentioned Louis Kahn. Maybe there are a few other examples, but this kind of postmodern melodrama scares me. Because the scale, first of all, you know, it's, I don't know, it intimidates me. Now we have a Youngstown historic. Should I go back to? I know there is another microphone, rebellious microphone, and I like rebellious things, rebellious people, but in this case, I would rather do without, if you don't mind. Thank you. So, Center for Industry and Labor in Youngstown, Ohio. Wow. Another temple, you know, another, you wonder, you know, is that cylinder again honoring some god on Mount Olympus or something? I don't know. I truly cannot take him too seriously. I am sorry. I know I am talking about a very important architect, but I'm not taking him too seriously. I took him seriously with the first buildings. I did. And I like this, let's call it sculpture, but this is not by him. I think the viscerality of this rusted iron has more truth than this whole building. But it's also true, it was that unhappy time, you know, when postmodernism exploded, and it took him a long time to renounce to it. Towards the end of his life, he diminished its power a little bit, but maybe also because of the workers in his office. He was ill at that time, so I don't know what his input was in their projects. They were still very busy. What can I say? You know, but perfect symmetry, two languages on the left and on the right, different language, in the center, another language. Anyway, move forward. Yeah, I think it's very dangerous, and I think Kenzo Tange was right when he said that actually tradition doesn't exist any longer, and we should come to terms with this. So when you try to mimic a connection with a certain past, it's very, very difficult. I myself, in some of my projects, I was unable to avoid a very questionable nostalgia. And maybe we should have a meeting about architecture nostalgia, because it's a difficult subject and a complicated one. Now we see one in Belgium. So he built in various countries, from Japan to Egypt to Belgium, the United States, 1993. Now here again, you know, but then I saw horrid buildings near Vienna, you know, kind of the same type, you know. I don't know. I think it's some kind of a sickness coming upon the world when we have too much freedom and we express our longing for pleasure, for hedonism in this way. You know, the bizarre thing is that I advocate homo ludens. I advocate playing, but for me, playing should be connected with innocence, not with mimicking innocence. I don't think this is an innocent architecture, and it saddens me, actually. And what is that melodrama at the top? You know, what is going on there? You know, and you see commerce. You see, it's about selling, but almost screaming at you to take notice of the building. You know, to admire it. Building in the Netherlands. Now, this is a house. It has some virtues. It is, again, you could see a certain reference to the architects of the 18th century. You know, might have done something like this. Neoclassical architects of the 18th century, maybe, but we are not in the 18th century. We are at the end of the 20th century. So, all those dramatic sculptural chimneys, the building is probably warmed up, with other technologies than, with, the chimneys became just a so-called romantic feature, but the actual heating of the house takes place differently. So, in other words, it's a stage design. Interesting also how he drew his plans at this point. So very different from how he did it at the beginning. They are in colors, and there's nothing wrong, of course, being in colors, but they are almost excessively sweet, although they are also cold. So they are both kind of cold and sweet, which is kind of strange as a pair of attributes. Anyway, it's a house, it's a villa, what can I say? It's a villa. Yeah, in a splendid setting, the projection, the reflection on the lake is splendid, everything is splendid. The proletarians do not live here, obviously. Luxe, calme, volupté, as Baudelaire would have said. Now we have a hotel in Egypt, and this really frightened me. The culture of entertainment frightens me. Egypt is confronted with hunger. Millions of people have nothing to eat. I know the situation in Egypt very well. And somehow I feel it insulting to build these resort hotels that mimic, of course, they are sources of income, but where does this income go to? It goes in the pockets of a few, not of the very many people who struggle to survive. And look at it, this culture of entertainment sickens me, I wanted, and in fact, I should have done it, but I didn't. I wanted to compare Michael Graves with Hassan Fathy. Now, Hassan Fathy, who was an aristocrat, dedicated his life to build for the poor in his native country, in Egypt. And he did it beautifully. And one day, someone has to compare Hassan Fathy building for the poor with Michael Graves building for the rich. Because this is not architecture. This is selling one's soul. This is what it is. And I think I come back to Khan, would have agreed with him. And maybe what saved Khan from making similar mistakes was that he also knew poverty. Very well, Vincent Scully said that in the case of Louis Kahn, there were two lights, the light of a candle and the light of a laser. So he had both form of lighting that came from the remote past and very modest, and also, a form of light associated with the future. In the case of Michael Graves, I see neither. I see neither the laser nor the candle. I see just this kind of empty opulence. I would never take such a vacation in such a, never. I dislike vacations just like Philip Johnson, but for different reasons perhaps. No, I guess the same reasons. But this kind of colonization through pleasure, through entertainment, frightens me. Look here, what is going on here? We offer exotic environments for milking money from the tourists. This is what it is about. And it's so sad that a professor of high caliber at Princeton actually served this industry. I think he could have selected certain projects, maybe more cultural, maybe, I don't know, more subtle, less serving this self-serving entertainment industry. But this only shows, he's mimicking here in a burlesque way. If you compare him with Hassan Fathy, you see very different ethics and very different aesthetics. Look at this table. My God, of course I am envious. Look at those fruits. Look at the drink. Look at the eyeglasses. Look at the chaiselongs. Look at the lake. Everything is magnificent. But outside of the resort, millions are dying of hunger, Mr. Graves. How do you feel about this? Did you think about this? Did you think of building social housing for these people? No, Mr. Graves, you worked for the very rich, making them even richer. That is the truth. And it's very, very sad and very disturbing. Now, a Hyatt hotel, of course, in Egypt again. What is this melodrama? You know, and who is served by this? You know, expensive drinks, comfortable chairs, you know. This is not culture. I'm sorry. Now, again, Egypt. Did I read correctly? Yes, I read correctly. A golf club. Who plays golf, Mr. Graves? Who plays golf? The President of the United States, a few other presidents, and a few other rich people. This is not a sport for the people who barely pay the rent, is it? But he built several in Egypt, not just one. So, of course, the circle unavoidably makes me think of Khan, but what a difference again. Anyway, another burlesque building, of course, another joie de vivre, another luxe calme et volupté. Everything is magnificent and dead. I would die there. If I was laying on one of these things, I would be a corpse in a few minutes, believe me. Not that it matters much to the world, I know. Another temple. Maybe there is a casino here, or I don't know what, something connecting with golf. Can you believe it? Maybe Zeus, well, sorry, we are in Egypt, not in Greece. I don't know. I'm not very knowledgeable about the pantheon of the Egyptians, but some kind of Egyptian god surely must have played here poker or roulette or I don't know what. Saint Coletta of Greater Washington. Now this is a more moving in a positive sense project in the sense that he built for people, for children with disabilities, but at that time he was already paralyzed himself. So he had inevitably some compassion for children who suffered, perhaps as he suffered. The buildings, still Michael Graves. I mean, I don't know to what extent his input was then, but he approved of the projects. He was still active. Now here you see the mimicking, you know, we don't have blocks of whatever, concrete or I don't know what other material of such dimensions as he's mimicking, you know, the strata of the constructive material. It's just stage design. That's all there is. It's stage design. Here, because there are three such schools, one near the other, this is another part, a little more ludic, you would say. But even here, I see a certain frigidity. If you could imagine a frigid play, I think if you could, you imagine something rather sad. And look at the plan. Yes, it is a fine, clean plan and is colored, you know, bucolically, but it's cold. To my taste, it's cold, and the buildings are cold. But maybe the children liked it, like them, although they are kind of repetitive and symmetrical. And even when he's playful, like here, there is a certain obviousness here that, you know, you had a feeling that, again, the level of innocence is not very high. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. So the intention of the building is good. And again, I appreciate that he dedicated his efforts to helping the children in need. This was good and it was necessary. But I wonder if the message sent here through his architecture is also not a little bit questionable, because it gives illusions, you know, and maybe, yes, someone in need needs illusions as well. But I think someone in need also needs some form of truth, because lies never go far, even in aesthetics. Anyway, yeah. Now we are already 2008, so he was already for 5 years seriously ill, and I'm very sorry about that. You know, it's not a good thing to hear that anyone is ill like he was. He paralyzed, I think, from the waist down, or even from the neck down. It's terrible. But you can see a change in his architecture, and this might have to do with a change that took place in time. In 2008 already we were 16, 17 years after the exhibition at MoMA of the deconstructivists. Things changed, modernity became again fashionable, postmodernism vanished. So his building is less so-called postmodern. We don't see historical references. So it has a certain modernism that is a little bit mellow, but the disturbing historicist accents are missing, and that's a good thing. Of course, you could ask why there are two canopies like this. You know, there is still a little bit of melodrama, but you know, this is perhaps often unavoidable in many works. Anyway, another resort, this time in Singapore, and I am really tired of these resorts all over the world, you know, and they are terrible as architecture. I mean, look at this, and you don't see very well, but you can still see. I think they are monstrous. Sorry for the resolution. I have other pictures a little better. Look at this. You know, this is. I could almost feel like improvising some kind of an expression. You know, the hysteria of entertainment. You know, this opulence. There is, I think, there is something sick here. You know, where extremely bored people from all over the world gather here to have fun for a few days or a few weeks at the most. But the ideology of the fun, but a fun without innocence, that is the problem. There's nothing wrong with playing. It is beautiful to play. But when you have these mega structures built in order to emphasize the immense power of the mega industry of entertainment, you feel manipulated. That's why I'm saying this is not innocence. You are manipulated. And who is the God, or what is the target here? The goal is money. That's what it is. And true playing and true innocence are not about money. But what can you do? Look at this. We are devastating the earth to build these mega settlements, which are destined to produce even more money through consuming, and consuming again. You know, and then we complain that we have a climate change. Well, this is just a little example. It's all over the world the same. Look at the sea, filled with ships, you know, bringing tourists both directions. Some leave, some come, private yachts, whatever. It's the assault of the human being on the earth. That's what it is. In the name of a so-called pleasure or pleasure principle that I think is understood wrongly. Maybe Pascal was right when he said all the problems of human life are because we cannot stand still in a room, in our own room. Now the pandemic is telling us to stand still in our own room, but this was built just 12 years ago. And I'm afraid when the pandemic ends, the assault on the earth will continue. with the same favorishness that made this possible. Look at it's all about consume, consume, and consume. And William Shakespeare said, if a human being is just about eating and sleeping and having fun, he's just a beast. And he was rough, of course, but we deserve his words. You know, this culture of eating and eating and eating and sleeping and consulting, you know, more people spend more time reading menus in restaurants than reading a book. You know, after all, does it really matter so much what we eat? I mean, the question is, do we live in order to eat, or we eat in order to live? And I'm afraid many people, very encouraged and pushed by capitalism, live in order to eat. This is the goal, to eat and eat and eat. And Michael Graves, the professor from Princeton, serves them. Look at this horrid interior. My God, I would lose my mind. It's not surrealist. I love surrealism. This is a frivolous interior that proclaims the power of aesthetics with an opulence that makes me sick. I am not lying. I was sick when I began to do this presentation. I felt very sick. Anyway, we move forward. Look, all for the glory of entertainment. And what could be more beautiful than having fun? An organized fun, not any kind of fun. Highly organized, planned by professionals. Now we see.
Dan.
Yes.
I mean, I totally agree with you of what you're saying, but please be careful. Don't get a heart attack. You're talking yourself totally into rage here now.
Thank you. Thank you, Florian, for letting me know. I don't want to die with you here either.
No, please don't. I mean, I'm totally with you on everything what you're saying.
No, but I appreciate that you may be attentive. This is the last work I show, of course, a National Automobile Museum in The Hague, in the Netherlands, 2010 again. You know, how could it be? You know, the Netherlands is a cultured country, a sophisticated country. They didn't need this building with expensive cars in, but okay, why not? After all, we are a dynamic society and we can accommodate many, even divergent things. Anyway, this is the building, and this is, I think, the last picture. No, it's not, because I will also show a few designs for object designs, because he was also a designer. I myself actually have a fan. It doesn't work. It's very poorly built, but it's signed Michael Graves. This man really knew how to make money. I mean, he signed everything. He was like Salvador Dali. I don't know if you know, but Salvador Dali once bought a large amount of sinks that the factory was getting rid of, and he painted a little toothbrush on all of them and signed Dali and sent them with astronomical prices, each sink. You know, this is the artist as a businessman. Anyway, the cars are nice, of course. I'm sure Rem Koolhaas would have loved them, and even Wolf Prix, they love speed cars. You know, I have no knowledge about cars, but I imagine these are, top cars. And now, as a designer, now his designs are as burlesque as his buildings from, that period after the first three houses. And look at it, you know. I mean, do we really need a Princeton professor to design for us this thing? Really? I mean, it's so without actually innocence, you know. It's, I find it's both burlesque and grotesque. Or this. I mean, come on. You know, you make Mickey Mouse buildings, you make Mickey Mouse, I don't know what it is. It makes toast, or what? I'm terrible in terms of, I know nothing about domesticity. But, I mean, look at this, you know. And I bet this very object, if was done by an engineer without any kind of artistic ambitions, would have been an honest, functional object very useful and very inexpensive. But this one, because it was done by the king of postmodernism, probably was quite expensive. And it doesn't deserve to be expensive, even in terms of design. It is, I'm sorry, in poor taste. And this, you know, I mean, do we need that bar there at the top? Really, it's pathetic, you know. And that maybe even melts down because it's made of plastic, and plastic doesn't function well when the fumes and the hot air comes out of this thing. And here is the great architect, you know. I mean, sorry for him. You know, I worked to make this presentation, but really, the assault of domesticity on me makes me uncomfortable. And thank you, Florian, for letting me know, because I have to be careful. Well, what is the meaning of this message? You know, I mean, what? You know, yes, we eat, Mr. Graves. We eat even without designed objects. You know, without so-called high design, we eat. And in fact, I think those objects that are not, you know, masterpieces of design are better than this. It saddens me. And look at this, you know, this is the art of decadence. I'm sorry. I know there were some great architects who also designed objects. There were some of the greatest in the modernist movement, and they do receive my respect. And Aldo Rossi also designed, and he was not the only one, Michael Graves. But somehow the level of domesticity that he addressed to me is, I don't know, it gives me, I have a bitter taste actually when I look at these things. Look, the assault of objects, you know, how they come towards me. The cars are coming towards me. The teapots are coming towards me. They all assault me, you know, they all tell me you are insignificant, Mr. Coma. We are more important than you are. We are going to take over you. And that's exactly what is happening, because this is what capitalism does. I produce in order to consume. And if the object, the product is signed by Michael Graves, of course, some people will be kind of forced to make larger pockets for themselves to accommodate larger amounts of money. And this is, I think, the last picture. You see his signature is above Hamilton Beach. And I look at this picture and I am asking myself, what am I living for? Really? Just to eat? Just to make toast? Just to have these 4 beautiful pieces of toast emerge beautifully as by magic towards me, to seduce me, to eat them, and then to what kind of world am I living in? I am really asking myself, and I am asking you too, because I truly feel that we are, the suggestion here, if not the obligation, is to live in order to eat.